But anyway, let me say something about assistant coaches. I got so much stuff here that I got to roll because I'm doing this for coaches and hopefully they can pick up some assistant coaches. This is where a lot of high school coaches, I think, mess up. They don't give their assistant coaches jobs on the sidelines. Coaches want to work.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we're joined by former high school basketball coach, Duane Silver. In this special episode, Coach Silver takes us through some of his favorite basketball ideas, or Silverisms, from his 50-plus years of dedication to the game. He was the head coach at La Vega High School in Waco, Texas, from 1977 to 1999. As a coach, he led his teams to 493 wins, 8 district championships, and 6 regional finals appearances. He was named Coach of the Year 9 times. After retiring in 1999, Coach Silver authored multiple coaching materials, including playbooks and leadership guides, which are highly praised by Texas high school coaches for their clarity and practical application. There are few people that have a passion for basketball like Coach Silver. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Coaches, the Jamodi Podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
So thankful to get to have this opportunity to talk with you. You're somebody that I've enjoyed talking basketball with. I feel like since I was in college, you would come to Baylor practices and you always had this phrase. You'd say, Matt, listen, I'm what you call a basketball junkie. And then you go into these new things that you've been talking about and learning. And I always really appreciated that because I thought even as a college kid, I think I'm that way too. And so this is just an honor for me, Coach. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Can I go on and talk about whenever you were at Baylor?
Go ahead. Yeah, we're just going to talk. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, we'll talk and you can edit it out. That's good. But anyway, I had some things I was going to say. Actually, do you remember Doug McNamee? He was
Yes,
a
I do.
manager at
Yep.
Baylor.
Yep. I do remember
He
Doug.
was the first person, well, as I watched the games, and basketball is my only hobby other than the Bible, as I watched the games, I knew that we were doing well when you were on the floor, as well. I mean, you might not have been making a lot of points, but the team did well. So Doug in high school had developed a plus minus chart. Do you still use one now?
Well, I learned it from Coach Bliss about the
Okay.
pluses for the good things that you do and the minuses for the things you don't. And it's about basically productivity.
Okay, well, what happened was Doug kept this whenever 5 players were on the floor, the plus and minus. And so we noticed that Baylor might have been ahead by 6 points when you went out on the floor, but when you came off the floor, we were up 14, so that was a plus. And I
Now,
never heard
Coach,
of
were
a
you
plus
going to
minus.
tell were you telling Coach Bliss this? Because I don't feel like you were helping me to stay on the floor more, which if he would have known this, maybe I would have.
I don't know. I would just talk to Coach Bliss, and he'd have to put up with me and
Yeah.
so on. But anyway, you got to play plenty, and he was real happy with you and so on. But anyway, here's a couple other things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to say this about James Naismith. You familiar with James Naismith, I guess?
Yes, sir.
You're a
Yes, sir.
smart guy. James Naismith invented basketball, I think 1891, but he invented it for 2 purposes. I think basketball is our most important sport because I think the Lord does, and I'll explain that to you. I know football's bigger, but basketball's important for this reason. Naismith invented basketball to have something for people to exercise in the cold months in Massachusetts in the winter in the East Coast. Well, he also invented it for another purpose, to spread the gospel of Christ around the world, hopefully. And you know what? He succeeded at it, which is amazing. So I thought that was great because it's spread around
Yeah.
now.
People like Athletes in Action and other coaches
Uh,
that have used basketball to open doors and to
mhm.
share the gospel. It is incredible that that's what one of his motivations were. And yeah, you're right. It has happened.
And I don't know if you're aware of it or not. After he invented basketball, he was, of course, a basketball coach. And he did eventually coach at the University of Kansas. And people don't realize that he's the only coach in KU history to have a losing record.
That is not something I knew. That's interesting.
To have not won there and so on. But anyway, he's was quite a guy and he made a huge difference here. Okay, let me get into a little bit of
That should make
basketball.
all of us feel good when we do have a losing season, just to remember that Naismith had one. That should make us feel a little better.
And I want to tell you another reason why University of Kansas is blessed in basketball. I believe God blesses some people, and as we well know. But the Kansas later on had a coach named Fogg Allen. It's Allen Fieldhouse
Yeah.
named after him. People don't realize it, but in the 1930s, the wasn't the NCAA then. They had a different name for it. But he was on a committee, and the committee all got together and they decided they would change basketball to only allow the players to have two dribbles, no more than
Oh,
two dribbles in the game. And Fogg Allen, which was a medical doctor, when there was a player injured on Kansas's team, he didn't take them to the doctor. He took care of them. Seriously. But anyway, whenever he fought them tooth and nail and allowed us to have more than two dribbles. But could you imagine how that would have messed up the game if we'd just been allowed two dribbles? So
drive motion
I
would
thought,
have
and
struggled. Probably never been invented. The way we play, it would be tough. Yeah, I get that. There's probably some coaches that would love that, though, don't you think?
yeah, I was thinking that too. The some coaches would be happy if we just have two dribbles. It's so, but anyway, he was that actually I met Fogg Allen when I was a little boy. I was in about the fourth grade and I went to a wedding in Lawrence, Kansas, and my dad introduced me to him. And heck, I didn't know who Fogg Allen was, because I was just a kid, but I thought I did actually shake his hand. And so on. Here, let me roll on a few things here about basketball. You ready?
Love it. Love it. Yes.
I think coaches need mentors. I'm going to tell you why Bob Knight was so successful. He actually became the head coach at Army when he was like 24. But his three mentors as a young coach was one named Claire B. Claire B is in the Hall of Fame. He's from New York. He's a great coach. Claire B, Hank Iba, which basically invented man-to-man defense at Oklahoma State, and the coach at California, Pete Newell, is also in the Hall of Fame. And some people say maybe the greatest coach ever. And so when he starts out coaching, he has three of the greatest mentors ever. And I think this is what coaches need to do now. They need to get out and get some older coaches to talk to. You can learn a lot from our pain,
Key
because we
point.
made so many mistakes. There wasn't any internet or anything. You just had to kind of learn on your own. And that's it's such an advantage to have the internet and everything that we have and so on. But anyway, I thought that helped him. Now, I wanted to say this too. As far as me on basketball, in 1961, Matt, when are you born? Huh?
1982.
1982, my goodness. But anyway, in 1961, the NCAA championship game used to be the only game on TV. You didn't have any March Madness. They just played the championship game on a Saturday. And so in 1961, I watched the game on TV. We had just black and white TVs then. I watched the whole thing, and Ohio State was undefeated, but they lost to Cincinnati for the national championship. And I became hooked on basketball watching it that. I was in the 8th grade. And so I've been into it actually ever since. Now, in the game, I later on looked at a magazine, the pictures in color that were taken during that game. This will amaze you. All the men, all the male fans and their wives that were at the game, it was played in Kansas City, about 10 or 12,000 people at Municipal Auditorium. They all had on sport coats and ties. The fans did.
It's
They
changed a
dressed
little,
up.
huh?
I know it. Now you got guys with no shirts on. I know it. So it's really, the world has totally changed. Then later on in I'm from Missouri, Windsor, Missouri, a small town outside of Kansas City, about 90. In 1963, Missouri is a little different as a state. It played the state championships in different cities. It didn't just play it in Columbia, where the University of Missouri is. Sometimes they played in St. Louis, sometimes Kansas City, sometimes Springfield. They rotated it around, and I think maybe still do. But in 1963, I went to the Missouri Large School State Tournament, state championship game, played in Kansas City. I was amazed. I remember Jefferson City played St. Louis Christian Brothers for the state championship. But in the semifinal game, Kansas City Central played Springfield Central for third place. They had a third place game. And there was a player that played for Kansas City Central named Warren Armstrong, which later changed his name to Warren Jabali. And he's about 6'2". He was Michael Jordan and Dr. J before they were players.
Yeah.
In fact, I did not see this game, but it is written in the Kansas City paper, and you can go read about it. When he was a junior in high school, he stole a ball and dunked it and hit his forehead on the front of the rim. It is written in the paper. It didn't knock him to his feet. He just grazed it with his head. Now, can you imagine that?
Which I didn't have that problem.
No, neither did I. But anyway, that was exciting to watch that. And then I eventually went to the state tournament, and I have watched the national championship basketball tournament, NCAA tournament, since 1961. I've missed two or three, but I think the most important thing, almost in American history, happened in 1966. Kentucky played University of Texas, El Paso, UTEP, for the national
Right.
championship on Saturday afternoon in Maryland. And in that game is the first time we've had 5 white starters against 5 black starters. And it was an amazing game. That game literally changed the integration of America, in my opinion. And so I enjoyed that. And Don Haskins, was the coach of UTEP, great coach. And it was an amazing game. Pat Riley played for Kentucky. But anyway, that game changed America. But quite surprisingly, University of Texas El Paso didn't have the best team in America, and Kentucky wasn't the best team. UCLA had the best team, but freshmen couldn't play. Lou Alcindor, which was Kareem Jabbar, was a freshman, so he only played on the freshman team, and had a player from Kansas City, Kansas, Lucius Allen, which played pro basketball eventually. They were just on the freshman team. They couldn't play, but nobody could have beaten them. Jabbar, or Alcindor's the only player that they've ever had to change a rule about, and that was that, they took away dunking for 2 or 3 years because he just literally could dominate so much in college basketball and so on. But anyway, that's a little bit of trivia that we can mess
That's
with there.
interesting.
But anyway,
Coach, I have a question. Can I ask a question?
oh, you can ask me. I mean, I don't know when to shut up.
No, you're good. The you're talking about coaches needing mentors, and I really agree, and I like that idea. Why do you think some coaches are reluctant to do that, or maybe just don't even know that it's important?
I think a lot of coaches are very insecure. And I've sent out a basketball newsletter for 25 years. I retired at the end of 99. and started sending a newsletter out in 2000. It was about the time you were at Baylor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for 25 years, I've sent out a newsletter. I used to send it out every day, and then I switched every week, and now I'm cut back a little bit. You know, you can only say so much, but I am still learning tons of basketball. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I've learned much more since I've retired than when I coached. I think coaches are insecure. And I had a good coach tell me, actually, Jeff Bell, I think he coaches at Grayford, Texas. Great
Yeah,
coach.
just won a state championship there. 1,000+ wins.
Right, right. And he's left-handed. And I want to talk about left-handers in a minute. But
Okay.
anyway, Jeff told me, he said when he was 25, he felt like he knew it all. When he's 35, he felt like he was kind of starting to learn, you know. He says the older you get, the more receptive you get, and just the better you get. But a lot of coaches are just reluctant to listen to older coaches, you know, and I think they need to, you know, I think it'd be great to open up and talk to them, you know, but I think they're reluctant and being a little bit insecure, probably.
I think you nailed it right there because I think if I'm being honest with myself, especially starting out, I think deep down I knew that I didn't know it all, but I wanted to act like I did. And I
Hmm.
do think if we can be humble enough to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and we don't know everything, then maybe we'll be more willing to go out and find like Coach Tommy Thomas is still a mentor of mine to this day,
Hmm.
but I should reach out more and I should ask more questions and it's but I agree with you. I think early on especially it's this idea of if I need help, that means I'm not very good at this. But I disagree. I think
Hmm.
acknowledging that we can learn things and need help and that self-awareness that TJ Rosine talked about as a superpower. I think we all need to gain that. But it's kind of
Right.
if a younger coach hears this and makes the decision, awesome, man, they are wise. Unfortunately, we usually figure out, man, I wish I should have done that when we're older, right?
Right. Well, if these younger coaches, we're not trying to get the credit for anything, older coaches. We really just want to talk basketball. You know, I know Kelvin
Yeah.
Sampson when he coached at Oklahoma. Do you remember Abe Lemons? He used to coach at Texas years ago. Okay, well, Abe Lemons was the head coach of the University of Texas. He was very witty and everything. But anyway, Kelvin was at Oklahoma coaching, and Abe Lemons lived in Oklahoma City. So Coach Sampson would actually send somebody out to his house to get him. He was sick and dying, and he would bring him to practice and let him scout, give him a notebook and let him scout practice, just because he knew that Abe loved basketball. You know, and so I thought that that was good. I think these older coaches, I think we ought to call our coach, our high school coach. I still keep in contact with him, Tom Goddard. He's 82 years old, and I call him every once in a while. And he calls me as sharp as a tack, and so on. But I think we need to kind of take them under, or keep up with them. They love it. Just get somebody in town that's retired from basketball and just get them to come out and watch your practice or watch a game. You don't have to do what they tell you. Just kind of listen a little bit. You might pick up one thing.
Somebody that has a lot of experience and also isn't too close to it might be able to
Uh,
give you a lot of good advice because I think sometimes when you're in the gym with your team for so long, you just get your
mhm.
perspective changes and you might not be seeing things clearly. And so an outsider's view that has
Right.
experience, that's really valuable.
It's just like your wife. She'll tell you different things, you know, and you'll think, I don't really agree with that. You don't say that to her, but she's probably right, you know. And so I think an outsider is helpful and can help you make your job easier on coaching and more fun and so on. But anyway, let me say something about assistant coaches. I got some much stuff here that I got to roll, so I don't want to,
Coach, keep going, keep going, keep going.
because I'm doing this for coaches, and hopefully they can pick up some assistant coaches. This is where a lot of high school coaches, I think, mess up. They don't give their assistant coaches jobs on the sidelines. Coaches want to work. I was an assistant football coach for 28 years. I don't know if I needed money that bad or I'm mentally ill. But anyway, so this head football coaches gave me all kinds of jobs. I mean, I had to turn the lights on before every home game. I had to turn them off. I had to pick up all the yard markers. My wife and we'd go around and pick all those up. I mean, just all kinds of stuff in practice. But I didn't mind having jobs, and I think most of them liked it. But I think assistant coaches need to have these jobs in games. One of them needs to keep a deflection chart. You know, you need 30 deflections in a game, and they need to tell them at the end of each quarter. You know why you keep a deflection chart? Deflections show you how much you're hustling, I think. So you need a deflection chart. You need somebody to keep a turnover chart, somebody to keep paint touches. Who gets a 50-50 balls? And you can go on and on. There's a million stats, but it's whatever each coach likes. But I think they need to be given jobs. And later on, I'll talk. You need to have a coach that's a blockout coach. In practice and games, he's kind of mean. Now, you don't have time to run every time somebody doesn't block out, but you need to get them to do 5 push-ups.
Yeah.
But you need every coach, even in college, needs a blockout coach. And just, because blocking out is hard to do and it doesn't come natural. Okay, let me go on. Stats that are important to keep. You go ahead.
Let me jump in right there because I love that idea of giving assistant coaches jobs, and I've definitely been guilty of, especially at Grapevine Faith, where we've had more part-time coaches. They
Mm-hmm.
have full-time jobs. They come to me after. So maybe this idea of like I don't want to not bother them too much, but overload or overwhelm them. But
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a bad excuse. And so I did take your advice on this, and and with the guys that would show up, a little bit more of a. So I love the things that you talked about charting. That I think a good activity for coaches is to, okay, let's just take offensively, what are the things that you want to accomplish? And so for me,
Mm-hmm.
we want to get a lot of paint touches. We want to shoot what we would call sevens, which are open shots, within our
Okay.
range. So a lot
Okay.
of times
Yeah.
it's threes, but anything. And then we want to get a certain number of rebounds. So that's one thing that like your offensive coordinator can be there charting. Well, then
Mm-hmm.
like it's a game of opposites, right? So if that's what we want, well, we want to stop them from doing that. And
Right.
so your defensive
Right.
coordinator can chart their offensive rebounds, their paint touches, and their open shots. Because what I want to know at every quarter is, do we have more offensive rebounds than they do? Do we have more paint touches than they do? And do we
Mm-hmm.
have more open shots than they do? And a lot of times, if we're winning in those categories, we're in a really
Mm-hmm.
good spot in the game. Or at halftime, if I know what those numbers look like, that can really give me a lot of direction in what we need to talk about at halftime instead of
Right.
just guessing at things. But that's a great reminder, Coach, and I love the ones that you talked about. But those are just 3 things that I like to focus on in games.
Well, if all of us can just learn a few little things about basketball, like when you go to clinics, you're not going to learn everything, but you can learn 2, 3, 4 little things that really help. And that's what my newsletter was all about, is trying to help coaches. A lot of these things I'm going to tell you tonight come from my newsletter, but it's just going to be podcasted and so on. But anyway, let me go on here. Stats that are important. I really only want to win one stat. Don't laugh. I want to win the best field goal percentage. I'm a prayer. If we could ramble a little bit here, I wanted Houston to win the national championship. Now they had some
Yeah.
things going for them that only Billy Clyde calls my thinking Silverisms, my ideas. Billy Clyde Gillespie, but anyway, here's one of mine. Teams that start a left-hander generally win national championships. Okay? Well, Houston started a left-hander.
How do you back that up? Where's that coming from?
Watching since 1961. UCLA, when they had Kareem Jabbar or Lou Alcindor, they had
Yeah.
Lynn Shackelford that was left-handed. that there wasn't a three-point line, but he would make all kinds of deep shots, enough to draw them out. But anyway, you just think about it. Now, now, I know that Florida won the national championship. They shot the best field goal percentage of the two teams. Surprisingly, they shot 34% and Houston shot 32. Okay, now my left-hander theory. Florida didn't have any left-handers, but their coach was left-handed. Now, that's very weird, but anyway, that's not part of my theory, but I thought I would throw that out to you. And this is the first
Think
national
how
championship
do you
game.
sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
How do you win? Can you win a game if you shoot a lower field goal percentage? What has to happen for you to, because that makes a lot of sense to me. What has to happen for you to win, but like be a Houston in that situation?
Well, with Houston, you don't want to turn it over 3 times in the last minute and a half. But
Yeah.
anyway,
That's true. Yeah.
Coach, I don't know exactly what to tell you on how do you win if you shoot a lower field goal percentage. But it does
I agree with
happen.
you though. I feel like the turnover battle, you have to win that, because if you're shooting
Hmm.
a less of a percentage and you're also getting less shots,
Hmm.
right? Like if you in theory, I think if you were to get more shots than your opponent, you could still shoot a lower percentage but still win, right?
Right. But generally, the team that shoots the ball the most loses. I know it doesn't
Hmm.
seem to make sense, but it does. Actually, the team that's ahead at halftime wins 74% of the time.
Wow.
You know, and actually, I'm a big Doug Collins fan. Remember when he used to uh, coach pro basketball? He said that the team that starts the fastest usually wins. And he also said, and maybe this will be true for Houston, you got to get your heart broken before you can win a championship. Now, you think about this happens quite a bit. The team will get beat and then they'll turn around in a year or two later and win a championship. You learn from that pain, I guess.
I think Jordan did
And
for
so on.
sure, with Collins and before Phil Jackson. Yeah.
Right. All of them lose sometime, of course, in pro basketball, even in college. You learn a lot more when you lose. It doesn't bother me to lose as long as you get to play another game. If you don't want to lose the last one. But if you play
Right.
another one, you learn a lot. You learn a lot more from losing than you do winning. You think about it, you do. So stats are important. Okay, now I've got 10 ways that you win the game.
I love it.
Now, these are things that I've noticed. Things Most of the things that I'm telling you, 99% of them are things that I've learned from other people. The only natural thing, this will sound like I'm bragging, but I'm not. The only thing that I ever thought of in basketball that I don't know of anybody else that has, and that is kicking the ball. Now, don't laugh. After a kick, Baylor actually keeps a stat on this. Jerome Tang, do you know Jerome, I guess? He's
Yeah.
at K-State now. But anyway, he laughed at me, but then he started keeping a stat on it. If you can kick the ball when the other team throws a pass, seldom after they inbound the ball do they ever score. Don't ask me why. It's just a fluky thing. But just watch. It happens.
So you're saying they're on defense, they kick it, team takes it out of bounds. They
Hmm.
typically don't score on that possession.
Yes,
Huh.
they typically do not score. It's just a weird thing. But anyway, I was going to say, let's not tell anybody I said that, but we will have a lot of people probably listening to this and so on. Okay, here's the
That's
10
not true.
ways to
Yeah.
here's 10 ways to win the game. Now, I think every coach should memorize them. I think you should write these down, put them on a note card, put them in your pocket, have them. If the other team scores 3 baskets in a row and you don't score, call timeout. You got to stop the bleeding. I don't care if you run out of timeouts, you stop them. Number two, very seldom do coaches do these things because they get so nervous in a game and so excited with people yelling and screaming. The last 30 seconds of each quarter, ahead or behind, and you get the ball, if there's around 30 seconds, 40 seconds, take the last shot of the quarter. Because teams run down there and shoot it real quick with 12 seconds. The other team gets the ball and goes down, shoots a layup at the end of the quarter, and then the momentum's to them. But take 30 to 40 seconds, take the last shot. Just hold up one finger. Then take it with 5 seconds to go. One shot. Rest your best player 30 seconds each half. Have you ever heard of Ralph Tasker? Ralph Tasker is a Hall of Fame coach from New Mexico. He won state 12 times in Hobbs, New Mexico. Plays very fast, pressed the whole game, very
Ross
up-tempo.
played.
Yes, and they had players there better than Ronald Ross, and he's plenty good. Bill Bridges that played in the NBA. One year, Hobbs had so many good players, he had 8 players get college scholarships. 8. But anyway, he says, take your best player out and let him rest for 30 seconds. He said, a high school kid can fully recover in 30 seconds. Put him back in. They're out there dying. I've actually seen kids foul on purpose just to get to rest. But anyway, so 30 seconds rest and then put him back. Now, here's where you run into a two-edged sword. You don't want to put him back, the kid that just played 30 seconds, you don't want to take him right back out. So you got to think a little bit about how to do that. Okay. Now, score the first basket of each quarter. Now, sometimes it's going to be their ball, so you have to have a stop. Now, I kept a stat on this when I coached. One year, when we scored 3 out of 4 times in a quarter, to start a quarter, we won every game. It's that big a deal.
Yeah.
Scored the first basket of each quarter. And you can, talk to them about making stops too. So that's important. Number 5, don't subs, when you put them in the game, tell them, you don't have to do this all the time. Tell them the first time you touch the ball, don't shoot it. You know why? They're not warmed up. They'll miss it every time. The first time they can touch it they can shoot it the second time. And actually, if some guys are listening to this that aren't starters, if when they go in the game, if they wouldn't try to score or they wouldn't turn it over, they can play a long time.
Yeah, that first shot or turnover when they first get in, it really hurts the confidence of the coach in that person, for sure.
I know it. It does. You're right. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. Okay. Now, be the last team out of every timeout. Sometimes you can make them come over there and get you. Now, you're going to think this is another weird thing. The team that stays in there the longest, that's the better coach. Did you ever watch Rick Majerus coach? He kept those guys in the
I went
huddle
to his
forever.
basketball camp. I went to his basketball camp in high
Did you?
school. Yeah, because Coach T and Coach Thomas and him were really good friends. Actually, kind of looked a lot alike. Us as people thought they were
They
brothers.
did. Uh-huh.
But I never got to. I didn't get to watch him much back then.
But he studied basketball. He'd been an assistant under Al McGuire. But anyway, he always kept them in there a long time, and I think you got to keep them in there. And I think at every time out, you should never be positive. Now, kids love negativity. I mean, just get over there. I don't care if you've run off 20 in a row and the other team calls timeout, you find something they did wrong. Because they just do better when you're fussing at them. My wife fusses at me, heck, I do better. And so it doesn't hurt to get fussed at. Your mother fussed at you and you're crazy about her. I think coaches have got to be like mean mamas. They just can't be nice. Okay, last team. Okay, now this is important. I learned this from Fran Fraschilla, great coach. If Grapevine Faith misses 2 outside shots in a row, could be a deep 2 or a 3. Next time we're going inside or driving, no exceptions. I don't care if you're wide open for a 3, don't shoot it. Okay, next, start all quarters driving. Get a bucket, get the momentum. I'll trade you layups for 3-point shots any day. You got to have them both, I know. I know you're a big 3-point guy. Okay.
This list is great because I mean, there's obviously some of them that, man, I'm right on board with and in line with, and then there's others that challenge me a little bit. But the beauty of basketball, and this, is that there's so many ways to win, so many ways to do it, and so just because I may shoot more than 2 threes in a row and keep
That's
pulling,
okay.
that doesn't mean everybody has to do that.
Right. Actually, I learned this from Calipari. After you make one or two threes, I heard him tell his team this. He says the next times you need to become a driver. Why Steph Curry is such a good three-point shooter is because he's a great driver.
Yeah.
He'll
Yeah.
hurt you one way or the other. And so,
Yeah.
but I think you got to be able to drive some after you make a three or two,
I like that.
and so on to that. And here, here, part of this is going to be four calls that you make on offense. I've written 30
Is this number
playbooks.
9? Is this number 9?
This is number, I got it number 10. I don't know what I've got here.
Okay.
But anyway,
Okay.
let's just add this to these things, okay? So I guess it would be 14 things. Sorry. But anyway, whenever you don't really have to have plays. I mean, I know a million plays. I love them. But I think with the pressure defense and everything, you got to be able to just play. But I think you can just have an alignment or have motion offense, but you need these four calls, even if you have different plays. You need these four, and they're simple. Number one, you need to swing your arm over your head. That means the ball's got to be reversed before anybody can shoot. Actually, that's Dean Smith's first rule of offense, I guess after spacing, is to reverse the ball before anybody shoots. Number two is paint touches. Just yell paint. I know you're trying to get paint touches anyway, but it just emphasizes it. And you can do a paint call where you just shoot it in the paint.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I
Number
think that one's
three.
huge. Hold on, coach, on number 2. I think that's really important though, because you're right. Like we do want to get a lot of paint touches, but the possessions that we don't, and we're just trimming the edges of the arc, we're typically going to shoot a
Mhm.
contested shot from that possession.
Right.
So the paint touch, it's not just to score from there, but it's also to create open shots around that you won't get if you're not touching it.
Right.
So I like that.
They claim if you can make two paint touches in a possession, that you'll score almost every time. Two paint touches. And so on. But anyway, I
I can
think
see
that's good
that.
to know. The third call is fist. You hold your fist up over your head. I used to watch Pat Riley when he coached the Knicks, and he'd hold up his fist, and I'd get up close to the TV and I'd write, what is this play? He's running fist. He's run it 15 times this game. Well, I got to thinking about it later. His fist just meant he was going to throw it inside to Ewing. So that means get it inside. Get it to your best postman if you can. And that was what his fist call is. They won't know what you're doing. And number four is there's an old saying by the Boston Celtics, and I think you should say this before the game to your team. 3 passes, we get a good shot. 5 passes, we get a great shot. You got me?
Yep.
That's when Red Auerbach coached them. Good night. That's before all these guys are listened to or even thought of. Okay. But anyway, 3 passes, you get a good shot. 5 passes, you get a great shot. So I would hold up 5 fingers, meaning we got to pass the ball 5 times, preferably kind of fast. Because in high school, the defender will make a mistake. If you pass it 5 times, now here's an exception to the rule. You ready? If you have a layup, forget the rule, shoot the layup. But you got to tell them that because some of them will try to do it. They'll try, they'll pass it up. Okay. Okay. Let me go on. I'm going to take too long here.
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay. Note writing. Do you write notes to your players? Do you write notes to people?
I'd like to be better at it. Buzz Williams, I think, is one of those guys that seems to be great at everything, but he does that, and so it's a aspiration of mine.
Okay, well, the top coach at writing notes is Bill Snyder, that coached football at Kansas State.
Yeah.
He wrote notes all the time. He wrote, I think a goal for a high school coach would be to write 10 notes a week. Buy note cards, get school colored ink. You can fold them after you write something positive, tell the truth. I would write my players something positive and one thing they needed to work on because they're more apt to remember something they need to work on. But anyway, Bill Snyder wrote notes. Say somebody played real good, a University of Kansas player against Kansas State. a good running back played well against him, he would write that guy a note and mail it to him. He'd get it on Monday after a game on Saturday. I mean, the guy is incredible. So he
Yeah.
is noted his whole career for being a note writer. But this is who you got to write notes to. You got to write them to the custodians, the cafeteria workers. Do you know all the cafeteria workers' names? Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but anyway, it's good to know their
I
names.
do, but it's been the same lady for 12 years.
Okay,
I
okay.
do,
Okay, so
but yeah, that's important though.
but anyway, write notes to them, the assistant principal, the principal. Everybody loves a note and everybody loves to hear their name. Don't just call them nicknames. Call them by their name. I love for somebody to call me Duane, when they run into me. I think Dale Carnegie wrote a thing. There was nothing more beautiful sound than hearing somebody's name.
That's
And it's
right.
true.
Yep.
That's true. To tell you a brief story, President George Bush, he used to play golf here in Waco, with Baylor's president and different ones. And this is about names. One time playing golf here, they played on Ladies' Day, so the ladies let them play through. But the president of Baylor knew these ladies, so he introduced them to President Bush, and so on. He said, "This is Betty Smith," and so on. A year later, they played golf on Ladies' Day again. They played through, and when President Bush went through, he waved at a lady. He said, "Hi, Betty, how are you doing?" He remembered her name. Maybe that's why these guys are incredible. But anyway, if you really, it's great if you can learn names. And I tell you, the best way to remember a name is when you meet somebody, just think of a movie star that has that name and put it with them. Like Matt, who's a movie star, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And it
just
sounds
every
like
time and
Sayman.
just run that through your mind, and
Yeah.
you'll always have these names. And you're getting ready to go to a
Yeah.
new place, so you've got to learn a lot of names. Okay, so on. But anyway, cafeteria workers, you need to write these notes. And then you don't have to mail them. You can just put them in their box or whatever. But anyway, it's good
Yeah.
to write notes. There's power in notes, not text. I know one coach, he texts all his former players Merry Christmas. And he's 10, 15 years of coaching. He keeps their cell number. But anyway, it's good to communicate.
Yeah.
So on, okay, let's see here. Notes. You think about doing this. Write your wife a love note and put it in the refrigerator and let her find it. Kind of surprise her. Women don't think like men. There's an old saying, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. We don't really think alike. And so on.
Good advice.
Now, jump around a
I'm going to
little bit
borrow that
here.
one for sure.
Need You can't do this. Won't have this often. But the team, you need a leader on your team. Now, usually it's a born thing. You can't make them a leader. Like you were a leader, but most people aren't leaders. I coached 29 years, head coach. Well, 27 years I was head coach. I had two natural leaders in 29 years. If you have them, they are so powerful. They can literally tell the other players what to do and they'll listen to them. And a lot of times they weren't the best players on the team. But anyway, if you could find some way of having leadership, it's so important. Have a team
Can I
leader.
jump in on that one?
Yeah, anytime.
So, so one quick story about that. I agree with you. I used to think that two things when I started coaching. I used to think that everybody wanted to be a college basketball player and that everybody was a leader. And I was at McKinney High School as a varsity assistant, and we had a team that we were really excited about coming up. We're going to play faster. We're going to spread the floor more. But I thought that there's one player that we had that, man, he had it all. He was a good player. People did respect him. And I thought if he would use his voice, he could really lead well. And we had to work out. And I just thought he missed some opportunities to establish himself as that. And I was young. I went and got him out of class, which I would tell you as any coaches, don't get your players out of class for basketball reasons or messages. Don't do that. But I got him out of class. I said, I really think you missed this opportunity today to be a leader. And he started welling up with tears. And now I'm freaking out because it looks like I've made this young man cry in the hallway.
Uh-huh.
Man, I said, "Man, what's wrong? Like, what's happening?" He's like, "Coach, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy." And that was like a moment of, okay, you can't
Golly.
force it. You can't force it. You wanna try to create an environment where they can rise up and you can enable and you can encourage that leadership to happen, but if they don't want to do it, it's gonna be really hard. Let me ask you this, coach, what are some of those attributes that you see in some of those players that became great leaders for you?
Well, they weren't afraid of the other guys trying to fight them or anything. And, where I coached
Confrontation,
at La
yeah,
Vega,
yeah.
and most of my players played football, you know, and so the leaders they've been leaders in football, so they came to basketball and they weren't afraid to speak up, and generally they weren't really great players. They were good athletes, but it was just born into them. I don't think you can teach it, but they generally just knew what to say. Larry Brown, he used to coach at Bryan. He coached at a million places. He's really the godfather to me of Texas high school basketball. He won the
Heard
state
that name a
championship.
ton. Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, it'd be nice. He's retired, lives in Florida now. It'd be nice if you had him on your podcast. He last time he coached was at Texas Tech under Beard, but
Yeah.
so he's worked his way. He coached at like 25 different schools in Texas. I mean, he moved all the time. But he was great. But he won state in 81 and 82, which was 4A then, which is now 6A. Uh, and surprisingly, the leader on both his teams each year, I mean, those 2 years, was the manager. The
Wow.
manager, he would get them at the huddle. They'd huddle up at the game. He'd say, "You all listen to coach. What are you thinking?" He would chew them out, and they liked it. So you never know who's going to speak up. We had a freshman at La Vega. He lined up the whole varsity football team and would just chew them out and make them play. And they loved it. But he was a good athlete. But anyway, so I don't know if you can make a leader. I know Grant Taft, when he coached at Baylor, he had a leadership school for his
Wow.
players, for them to learn how to lead and so on. But I don't know I don't know how it happens. It's just born into people
Yeah.
and so on. But anyway, so you got to have leaders. Now, let me do this, Matt. Tell me when I'm talking too long.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I wanted to
this
write down my 5 top email. I want you to think about writing down my 5 best emails in 25 years. Okay. You ready?
yes, sir.
Now, this first one, almost nobody does in Texas or America. And I learned it from Matt Wester. And Matt Wester learned it from Jeff Clarkson. I think Jeff said, what, Prestonwood?
Yes,
And Matt did it at Plano. And it's called a Bolo Screen. And I don't know how they got the name, but it's called a Bolo Screen. Nobody does this. But this is my number one email over 25 years. Nobody, like I say, nobody does it. I say it's my number one email, but I'm not getting anybody voting on these things or anything. But anyway, what happens is almost everybody in Texas, athletic teams press man to man, don't they? Usually. At some time in a game, you're going to get pressed man to man. If you're behind, head late in the game, they're going to press you, whatever. But anyway, and so what happens is you set a Bolo screen whenever they score and they press you man to man. You'll normally throw the ball into your point guard, right? Could throw it into two, but you're going to throw it into a guard. You have your big that's going to be guarded by their biggest guy. Set a ball screen for the dribbler between the free throw line and the half court line. Go screen him, set a legal screen, and tell that guard to drive off of him either right or left. Are they going to switch? No, they're not going to switch because that big can't guard him. I've never seen it double teamed. I have never seen it not work. And Matt did it in the state tournament. Oh, I've seen teams get worn out with a man-to-man press, and all they had to do was ball screen.
think about it, or you believe that your ball handler should be able to handle it on their own, but why not make it easy for him? But you could also create a really good advantage out of that because if they are pressing, most likely they're going to be more spread out than having really good
Right.
help. And you can create, like for us, we have more of a full court style offense against
Uh-huh.
pressure. That would make us play even more advantage games out of it. So I love that.
Generally, you'll get a lot of layups out of it, and you'll break them down. They'll make a play. But anyway, that is my. I love that email.
Okay.
Bolo Screen. Always number two. Always hand the ball to the official with two hands. Look him in the eye. You could even wink at him. Just kill him with kindness. Kids today are so rude to people in authority. That teaches them some discipline. I had one coach this last year that I told him to have his players do that. He did it. They did it all year. In practice, they would even have to hand the ball with two hands to the coach. They couldn't throw it. If they throw it to the coach, they had to do some type of penalty. If they threw it to the official, they got them. They made them run the next day. But I had one coach that did it, that the school board president from an opposing school came over to him after watching the game and seeing him hand the ball, said, if you ever need a job, I won't say the name of the school, said, we will hire you. Because that is amazing, them handing the ball. So make sure, I learned that from Rick Shirley, that, the
Oh,
head of
awesome.
the assistant, the TABC, Hawks, the head of it
Yeah.
now. Let's see here. Hand the ball to the official. Wearing the crown. You know what that is, where on out of bounds plays, when the other team's inbounding it and you're playing man to man, wearing the crown comes from Norm Stewart, the University of Missouri. He always stood his man defending the inbounder under the rim, looking at the ball. He's like a hockey goalie, you know. And then you play, man to man. That guy won't get any shots if you hustle to cover him if they run a play, special play for him. By the way, when you run wearing the crown or any out of bounds play on man to man defense, don't let them catch the ball in the near corner. You follow me? Make them throw it
Yeah.
someplace else, because
Yeah.
that's where you throw most of them. Some of them lob it back now to the elbow. Anyway, that is a good thing to do, wearing the ground. And the other thing is, you can take your big on out of bounds plays and put him over the ball where they can't see, and play everybody else play man to man. You can switch. That's how Duke defended this year, all year, with the big guy, 7-2 guy over the ball. And the other thing you can do on out of bounds defense is you can play a triangle and two. In fact, two great Texas coaches played a triangle and two their whole career on out of bounds plays, and nobody do it. See, these guys will tell me the truth because I'm retired.
Did they stay in it the whole time, the whole possession?
No, once they got it
Okay.
in, they played man to man.
Okay.
Okay, Larry Brown, that was at Bryan. He played a triangle and two, even when he coached at Ranger Junior College. He would even keep stats on how many times he gave up a score on an out of bounds play. His last year at Ranger Junior College, they scored 7 times that year on out of bounds plays. Okay, and let's see who else did. J.D. Mayo, he played a triangle and two his whole career at Skyline. Those are two great coaches.
Can you
But anyway,
explain how
so
that
think
works?
about doing that. Okay, you're going to find their two best outside shooters. Most teams only have two shooters. Now, on out of bounds plays, their best shooter, one of the shooters could be the person inbounding the ball. So you'd have to play him man to man, then find their other best shooter. Then if the two best shooters are on the floor, you play them man to man, and the other guy's in the triangle, you're going to put it all around their big guy, you know, and so he won't get it. And then once it gets in, just go man to man. It's a
Like
great way. That it really does work. It's very successful. A triangle and two, and let's see, where am I at here?
wearing the crown, triangle
Okay,
and two.
on missed free throws. One of my friends, Joe Holliday, which was Roy Williams' assistant coach for 15 years at Kansas and then at North Carolina, not once in the 15 years there, whenever Kansas or Carolina shot a free throw, did their bigs try to catch it. They tipped them all to half court. They practiced it, and they tipped them all to half court. They didn't want, and it's amazing. It's easy to do. And also, a lot of teams now, Santa Clara is great at this. Whenever they miss an outside shot, if you can only get one hand on the offensive board, you can't tip it in, they tip all those to half court now. Santa Clara was the best team in the nation this year at doing that. But anyway, file that away. Tipping it back on missed free throws and missed shots. Okay. Here's a good thought by Joe Paterno. You can't be a nice guy and do this job. I think Joe Paterno was tremendous. And he also said this. I follow a lot of coaches, not just basketball coaches. He said this, and think about it because it's very deep. You ready? Your players tend to become what they believe you think they are. Your players tend to become what they believe you think they are, meaning they're watching your body language. They're watching everything about you, and they can tell whether you think they're good or bad, you know, or not as good. I shouldn't say bad. But anyway, so watch, file that away because that's very true. It helps.
I
Okay,
love that, coach. I think that's super powerful because you can say all the right things, but your tone, your body language, the way that your face looks, man, it can send just such a different message. And I think being really conscious of that in games, in practice, and skill work, really important.
there's so much psychology that goes into this. Bear Bryant, even though he was a rough guy, you know, I actually wanted him to be president of the United States. But anyway, uh, he did this in football. After a game on Saturday, on Monday, he would replace two offensive starters and maybe a defensive starter or two. And on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they would be on the second string, you know. Thursday, they were back on the starting lineup, you know. But anyway, I think
Yeah.
sometimes in basketball, it doesn't hurt. Why does a kid have to start? You know, the last game
Yeah.
I coached, you know, not the last game I coached, the best player and the leading scorer in La Vega history, the last game he played for me was a senior. I benched him, you know, because he was hogging the ball. I thought the game before, and my wife, and so I didn't start him. My wife says, honey, you really punished him. You held him out 1 minute and 27 seconds. But anyway, so you got to use something on him. Have you ever heard of the I want theory? Okay, remember when you were a kid, your room would be a mess. Your mom would say, I want that room cleaned up now. You got me?
Yeah.
What'd you do? You cleaned up that room. She said, I want. Now, think about doing that in practice. I want you all to block out, or I want you all to start diving on the floor. So I tried this theory. I spend about 5 to 9 hours a day on YouTube. I've got too much free time. But anyway, so I saw this on YouTube about I want. So I decided I'm going to try this theory on my wife. Now, I didn't tell her what I was doing.
You gonna
So
watch this?
she doesn't particularly get up early. So I told her the night before, I said, I want us to go to HEB shopping tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Okay. Well, she never does what I tell her anyway, you know. But anyway, so we get up. Heck, at 8:45, she's dressed. She's ready to go. She said, we got to go to that store at 10 o'clock. I thought, man, this theory works. But anyway, so try the I want theory on. I hope your wife's not listening. You try it on her. But anyway, that's not bad. Okay, next, thoughts for the day. Dean Smith did 2 thoughts for the day, and I think coaches should. I think you should put it. Do you teach any classes?
Not right now. I will have a couple speech classes, which I'm excited about.
Okay. But I think classroom teachers and most of these coaches that are listening, they have a classroom. I think you should put a thought for the day up there.
Yeah.
And because the kids are remembering stuff. They remember more than we think. And you remember what you wouldn't think they would. But anyway, Dean Smith put a thought for the day on the board about life, and then he put a thought for the day about basketball. In other words, like the thought for the day might be for basketball, dive on the floor. Okay. And then during practice, he'll stop it and he'll say, pick out one of the players. He'll say, what was the thought for the day? And if the kid didn't know it, everybody's got to run. Okay. If the kid knew it, nobody ran. Okay. He did that every day. Now, his thought for the day on life, he just wrote it up there and they had to read it. I don't think he asked them that. But anyway, here's a good one. And I want you to think about this. It's by Mark Twain. He and I are both from Missouri. I don't know what that means, but he's a little sharper than I am. But anyway, he said, when in doubt, tell the truth. Now, this is what he noticed about life. And some of these people are smart. He noticed that people that tell the truth don't get in trouble. No,
Yeah.
and I got to thinking about Watergate. These kids out here listening, these young coaches may not know what Watergate was. But anyway, Watergate, President Nixon lied about what went on at the Watergate Hotel. But I'd often thought if Nixon was going to win the election, all he had to do was shut up. But anyway, if Nixon just said, look, we broke into the Watergate Hotel. He said, that was dumb. We shouldn't have done that. I am sorry. America would have gone for it, and I think
Yeah.
tell the truth. It's a good thing to teach kids. You can teach so much in basketball that like I used to make my players wear their practice jerseys inside. I guess you could do that years ago. You wear them outside now, don't you? Probably practice jerseys.
Outside. What do you mean?
Okay, they'd had to tuck them in their shorts.
Tuck 'em in. Yeah. I'm not a big stickler on it, personally.
I think, as I look back at it now, it was dumb on my part. But I ran into one of my former players 3 or 4 years ago. He told me, Coach Silver, you screwed up my life. I said, how did I screw up your life? He says, I cannot wear my shirt tail outside. It has to be tucked in my pants. He said, I'm 40 some years old and I have to have it tucked in every time I go outside. So I thought something happens. They are listening or they're paying attention and so on. So thought for the days are important. So think about that. And you have to have a couple of them. You keep a whole book of them. I've got a thing here. If people wanted to email me, I've got 160 tweets that I saved that are just kind of like this, but you could write them down. Here's can you see this? Can you see it? Okay. And then I did have one sideline play that I can tell you all that's
Okay.
important from Morgan Wooden and so on. Okay. When players come out on the floor before practice, most kids just grab a ball, they go out there and start shooting, right? Till you get there or whatever. I don't think that should ever happen. I think they should get a ball and a partner. You don't have to assign them. They have to have a partner. They go out there, warm up just a little some way, and then they shoot 5 shots and their partner throws it back to them and they rotate and they keep doing that until practice starts. I think it's a better way to start. It's simple. Okay. I think that's good. So no free shooting. Why kids miss free throws? This is a Silverism. You ready? Now, it's not rocket science. Of course, I think you miss free throws because they fall backwards. Great free throw shooters when they shoot it, they'll eventually fall forward or stay where they are. But anyway, if you watch kids look at your tapes and they fall backwards, I don't know why. They're not in a hurry to get back for defense. But anyway, they need to not fall backwards. Now I learned from Al McGuire. Al McGuire is one of my mentors. I never knew Al McGuire. But anyway, we use the word paint, right? In basketball, the paint. He invented that, years ago. He's the first person to say shots in the paint. He had all kinds of different sayings that we use today we don't know about. But anyway, he always said, when you shoot a free throw, you shoot it to swish it. But if you're going to miss it short, let it roll in. If you hit the back of the back of the rim has no mercy. So those are important ways that will help on free throws. On free throw shooting, Gino Auriemma 3 years ago decided in practice to have no free throw practice that year. The girls would never have free throw practice. They would just practice basketball and, no free throw practice. He said their percentage was just as good that year as the years they practiced shooting 50.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so on. Gino
It's a
Ariano
time,
also,
not a time waster, but it's definitely a time user. Like it sucks up a lot of time. And I think I've heard a lot of coaches say there's two things that you really you shouldn't have to teach in season practice. And one is effort and the other is your free throws. Those are things that they
that's
just have
good.
to bring with them.
Uh-huh. Well, I know in free throw shooting, when I first graduated from college, had a guy that I'd played against in high school that became a coach, and he coached a sophomore team in Kansas City. And he told them, he said, before we can go home tonight, each player had to make 10 free throws in a row. Now, this was at about 6 o'clock. He got home at 10:30 that night. Because he stood by his thing, but boy, I thought, don't ever do that, you
And
know.
you'll get some parent emails really quick from that.
I know you didn't get those back in the 70s, that you didn't
That's
have to
true.
worry about
You'll get a
that.
parent note.
It was a different world. I learned this from Steve Spurrier, but I think we need to get it in sports because I listen to all these podcasts and these guys talk so terrible. Steve Spurrier told them they couldn't use the F word in practice and they couldn't take the Lord's name in vain in practice or games. And I think that's good to know. I think the F word is just flying around too much and so on. Now, all of us know this, but you get what you emphasize. And I think you should have one thing a day. You get what you emphasize. And heck, if it's just one thing, each coach will have something different, but it'll be different every day.
For that to happen though, coach, that means that you got to know what you're looking for.
Right. Like I did this one day when I coached. I had a right-handed guard, point guard, but when he would throw it from the top of the key to the left, he would throw it right-handed, and the other team would deflect it. I lined the whole cotton picking team up and I taught them all how to pass a ball to the left without getting it deflected.
Yeah.
But anyway, and they never did it again. But usually you're going to make some screw ups. But anyway, I remember emphasizing that once. Have you ever heard of the forgetting curve? Okay, this is important for coaches. You ever heard of George Raveling? He's a Hall of Fame coach, and he has reading with Rev. He's big on reading. I think he's still alive. He lives in California. He coached at SC, a lot of different places. Great coach, a better person than coach. He's like I say, he's in the Hall of Fame. Well, he has the forgetting curve, and this is what it is. Former coach George Raveling subscribes to the forgetting curve. It claims that players forget 55% of what they learn within 1 hour. 1 hour, they're going to forget 55% of what you tell them. After one day, they'll forget 65%. After 1 week, they will have forgotten 75%. Point behind this theory is telling your players once is not enough. You actually have to show them. You should actually show them. My last year that I coached, I did a pet peeve every day. One thing that I hated, I mean, I would actually show them about getting on the floor. I would dive on the floor, but I was only 52 or something at that time. But anyway, I think they got to see it too, and they got to do it. Anything I can do, I have got. But if you just tell me, I can't get it. But anyway, remember the forgetting curve. I think it's great
Coach,
for
I
coaching.
think that's really important because I know I'm guilty of, and a lot of coaches guilty of, in the moment in a game or in a practice, stopping and saying, "Hey, listen, we talked about this. Don't you remember? We talked about this. We went over this." And
Uh-huh.
it's I'm guilty of it. I don't think to your point about those percentages, I don't think it's much of an indictment on our players and them not paying attention or caring. I think it's more of
Uh-huh.
shows our lack of teaching something
Uh-huh.
and how like PGC was great about this. They said you players have to hear it, they have to see it, they have to do it. And some
Uh-huh.
people need all three of those. Other people just need one or two, or in different levels. But I think, and you've probably heard this too, is we haven't taught them until they've got it right. Like they can't get it wrong or
Till they've
something like
learned.
that. But yeah,
Yeah,
until they've
till they've
learned it.
learned.
Yeah.
And what was the thing that the Point Guard College said? There are three
They
things.
said players have to see it, they have to hear it, and they have to do it. So see it
Okay.
is maybe us showing them or through film. Hear it is obviously us
Uh-huh.
telling them, but then doing it is them going through the actions themselves.
Uh-huh. That is good. I need to send that out in a newsletter. That was great.
Vindictive Enzio. Did you ever get to run into him?
I never ran into him. I've read about him. He's got two of the greatest books, Stuff, and I'm sure the guy's a genius.
He
You know,
was. He was. Yep.
he was good. I remember actually when he played at Duke years ago.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
forgetting Curb. I think basketball coaches and football coaches, I think we need to become a team. We need to learn, in big schools and stuff, you're fighting over schools, you're fighting over players, but not so much like where I coached at La Vega, the kids all played football, but it seemed like they liked basketball better, but they, they love, we played all, and I never did talk a kid out of not playing football or ever. And fortunately, God was good to me. I never had anybody get hurt playing football, you know, seldom or
Yeah.
miss a game and so on. But anyway, but I think basketball coaches don't have two-a-days much anymore. But anyway, in football, but I think basketball coaches ought to buy donuts or something on Saturdays and coffee and take it up and give it to the coaches, just once a year. I think it would be good.
Like that. Yeah.
And knowing all the football coaches' names because we need to work together better. Okay, now I wanted to tell you about a team sign. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
I told you this earlier. A team sign, nobody does this, but I learned, well, in Texas that I know of. There was a real good coach in Missouri that was at a school that was good at football. Okay, he was at a 6A school, but he wanted to try to build up his basketball team. And so he thought, what can I do to make this kind of positive for us? So he thought of a team sign. And this team sign is not only for this year, it's for the rest of our life when we meet. Okay? So in other words, I'll just give you one thing. This is what I came up with, but each school would come up with their own sign. So like if you don't do this in the halls when you meet at school, you do this whenever you run into each other off campus, say, just a different job, just when you run into each other. But the one I came up with was when you if I ran into you and we were on the same team, the coaches do it too, by the way, not just the players. You pound your heart twice with your fist and then point at the other guy. There's numerous ones, but it stays that way forever.
Sure.
And you make them do it. You can't hardly punish them off campus for running. But anyway, make it a big deal. I think it's kind of cool, don't you?
I do. I love that idea. And I'm all for little things like we snap quite a bit to each other because that's a PGC thing that I just borrowed and we use there. But I really like the idea of having something that
What was the
like you
thing they did?
said, we just snap a lot for
Okay,
to celebrate. It kind of takes the place of clapping. It's like a lot of amen at church. That's what's kind of like. Like if I
I
say
like
something
it. I
that you
love it.
agree with, you snap. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is good. I love it. That's
But the
tremendous.
team sign coach, that's
Okay,
really cool. And I think what I like about it is what you said is it changes every year. So it's not just like program wide, like after 10 years, everybody's doing the same sign. It's for that group where I think they can get together, have some fun with it. But like you said, we need to all be on the same page. Coaches need to do it. I love that.
okay, good. Okay, three things that great players have. You have to have all three of them. You have to have talent, passion, and character. You have to have all three of those. Now, you think about great players, they all have that. You can't be missing one of them. So, but anyway, you think about great players, they have these things. Do you realize that Jordan, when he played for the Bulls, never lost a suicide in the 4 years that Craig Hodges, which is a great three-point shooter, played with it? Maybe that thing's loose here. But anyway, so the great ones that's what they do. They have talent, character, and passion. Okay, and not just basketball, all sports. Okay, The Theory of Two by Kevin Eastman. Have you ever heard of it?
I've
Now
heard
this will
of
really
Kevin Eastman, but not the theory of two.
okay. He was a pro coach, assistant coach for years,
Yeah.
and so on. But anyway, here's what he said. You get your whole team in front of you. It takes 2 minutes to show them a skill. say any skill, blocking out, passing, anything you can think of. It takes 2 minutes to show them. Now, after they learn it, it takes 2 weeks for them to kind of figure it out by doing it every day for 2 weeks. Now, after 2 months of doing it every day, it takes 2 months before they feel comfortable enough to do it in a game. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
That
takes a
means just doing
long
something
time.
once isn't enough.
No, you're going to have to do it a lot uh, to do it any good. You know, I coached for 13 years before I taught my players shot fakes. 13 years. And we had a game on Friday, and in practice on Thursday, I taught them shot fakes. I'll never forget this. And we went down the floor, and one kid, he faked a shot and put it in. And instead of running back down the middle of the floor, he ran by our bench. He said, "Coach Silver, that worked." I thought, golly. But usually you can't learn it in one day. But
Right.
anyway, I thought that was amazing. But anyway, theory of two is you got to teach your stuff a lot and you got to do it a lot of times. I have got a list of pet peeves I can send to coaches. There's a lot of pet peeves. My number one is probably jumping to pass, driving in the
Oh, yeah.
lane and jumping
Yeah.
to pass. But I have got offensively and defensively, I've got all kinds of pet peeves. But anyway, we need
What
to
are some
talk
of your
about
main
that.
ones?
Jumping to pass, think dribbling in the manure. You know what that is?
Yeah. That's
Huh?
PGC. Yeah.
Yeah, that's from them. But anyway, passing it through the manure for people, it's 3 feet from the sideline, the baseline, all the way around the court. If you dribble through there or pick the ball up through there or pass it to somebody in there, that's where you have lots of your turnovers. So that's a big one. I have a number of pet peeves. I'm kind of brain locked right now about
It's okay.
what's your number one pet peeve?
I would say with as far as playing goes, is going off of 1 foot at the wrong time. I think
Okay.
playing off of 2 feet is like the number one playmaker commandment is thou shalt be under control. And so how do you
Mhm.
demonstrate control as you play off of 2 feet? That's not saying that you can't go off of 1 foot, but I would say that most players get into trouble or are out of control when they go off of 1 foot at the wrong time.
I think you're right. I think you're right. The other day, and I think you coaches that are listening to this should consider this when they're watching games or tapes, turn off the volume. The other day, I turned on YouTube and I was watching Villanova play whenever Brunson played.
Yeah.
Was playing. They had several good players. But anyway, as I watched it, I was literally shocked at watching that they always shot off 2 feet and the amazing amount of shot fakes that they made. That's what Jay Wright must have emphasized is shot fakes and playing off 2 feet. Because, I mean, every guy did it that caught the ball in this 2 minutes sequence. And I didn't pick
Yeah.
up on it. But, I didn't get shots blocked when I was in high school too often because I always fake shots. And I thought when I started coaching that kids would kind of know to fake a shot. Well, crud,
Yeah.
they don't know.
I've tried to tell my guys this, and I think it's good to remind them that if your shot gets blocked, you made the wrong decision. And your shot getting blocked is an error. I think sometimes they view their shot getting blocked as if they didn't do anything wrong. The other player just made a great play. But I don't view it like that. I think you should
Mhm.
go an entire game without your shot getting blocked. Any shots getting blocked. And if they
Uh,
are, it's because of the decision making that we're using in those moments.
I think another thing that's a good point. Shouldn't do it. Another thing that I never did when I played was step on a line. When you have the ball, step on. In a crucial situation, Houston had a guy, L.J. Cryer. He stepped on the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
I know you're out there hustling your butt off. But anyway, but you're right. You shouldn't get shots blocked. You should know how to figure out some way to throw in some crap up there where you don't get it blocked. You know, and so on. But anyway, that uh, now you need to write this down. Do you like Dan Dockich? You know who Dan Dockich is? He played at at Indiana years ago, and he has talk shows.
Yes, I remember him. Yep. He's
Oh,
very opinionated, right?
oh, he's very opinionated. Yes, but I like him. But he said this,
Yeah.
and I never heard it before, and I think you ought to write it down. The ball finds hustle. You ever heard that? Now I'm going to
Oh,
explain this to you.
yeah.
It's true. If I think you ought to make a sign and put it up in your locker room.
I like
There's
it.
a lot of
Yeah.
signs that we could have in there. The ball finds hustle. Now, what it is, if you hustle your butt off, the ball will just end up with you, come to you. I mean, it's like magic. But anyway, I used to watch Waco High play before my grandkids started playing. I'd go over and watch Waco High play games. It's not far from my house. And then this one kid, he was a football player. He was about 5, 6, or 7, and he was about the eighth or ninth man. He would have played for me, but he didn't play that much. But when the coach would put him in, he would literally fly all over the gym. The ball just came to him. Every time the ball just came to him. I was just amazed. And then I'd heard Dockage say the ball finds hustle. I said, that is true. I had never thought of that. So I think it's something good to get in our minds. The ball finds hustle.
Love that
You've
phrase. And
heard the saying,
as a past Mr. Hustle Award winner at Baylor, I was that for 2 years. And at the time I thought Coach Bliss is just making up an award so that he could give me something, at the end of the year. But I ended up really valuing that. And I think you're right on the money. I used to believe, and maybe it was ball handling also, but if I played hard enough and that ball was loose, that I would come up with it. And I really believe that happened quite a bit. And I think that quote, there's a lot of truth to that.
well, that's a real honor. I always liked Coach Bliss. He was really good to me. You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to call him, but I don't have his phone number. The ball, have you heard the saying, fake a pass to make a pass, right? I have another step beyond that. You ready? Fake a pass.
Yeah.
By the way, this is the one thing that coaches do wrong. You've got to teach your inbounder on out of bounds plays against presses to fake a pass to make a pass. They don't fake when they're standing out of bounds. Just
Right.
you got to.
Right.
Part two of that is fake a shot to take a shot when you're in traffic. Fake a pass to make a pass, fake a shot to take a shot, particularly when you drive to the goal. Guys will just put it up there. You got to fake. So I think both of those kids love little quotable things, little
Right.
things like that to say. I think you win the game this way, two ways. I've said this before. You win the game with points in the paint and free throws. Now, I know threes are huge. I know you're a big 3-point guy, and you got to make some. But you win the game with points in the paint and free throws. Okay? Now, this is one reason why Kelvin Sampson's successful and probably why I wasn't in a lot of ways. And most coaches are a failure because of this. They play favorites. Kelvin Sampson does not play favorites. He had one guy that was a 4-year starter for him that, they have practice on the day of a game. I mean, they have a full practice on the day of a game for probably about an hour. This guy kind of loafed. He'd started 4 years. He didn't start that night. He doesn't play favorites. And I think we need to all remember that. It's huge. Now, you need to write this down, Matt. The Steve Alford rebounding drill. It's on YouTube. It's a 2-on-2 team rebounding drill thing. Play to five baskets. Incredible. Best rebounding drill ever. It's kind of an offensive, defensive type thing. Okay, I was going to tell you about left-handers, correct?
That's right.
Now, don't laugh. I think left-handers catch on to things quicker than right-handers. Now, my wife is left-handed. Of course, catching on quicker than me is not real hard. But I think that I think left-handers are smart people. And I like having them on the basketball team. And so, but anyway, just remember that theory. Left-handers catch on to things quick, and it's great to have left-handers play. Okay, next. This is why a lot of coaches fail. They're not consistent on their discipline. If the best player acts up in a classroom, he doesn't get in a lot of trouble. But if the 10th guy on the team acts up, he might really get him. I learned from John Chaney. Do you
That's
remember
huge.
John Chaney? Do
Oh
you
yeah,
remember
from
John Chaney
Temple.
when he coached at Temple? He says most coaches aren't willing to do this, but he was, because he was a real disciplinarian. He said they're not willing to lose a game to make a point. So he would suspend good players if they acted up. Okay, there's two types of
Smart dude.
coaches. There's two type of coaches: born coaches and made coaches. I'm a made coach. Some coaches are just born, you know.
What's the
But
difference
I have
between the
spent
two?
the born coaches, they really don't have to go to any clinics. They're the ones out in the hall at the clinics. And they'll beat you. And I'm in there taking notes, trying to learn something, and they're whipping me. They just have a knack for this, and I can't say what it is, but and some people are just know how to do it. And I can't say exactly what that is. What do you
Okay.
think?
I think it probably has more to do with presence, the communication
Uh-huh.
style of somebody, because I think you can learn a lot of X's and O's and strategy, but
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in a gym and I'm listening to a guy and he just or a girl, a lady, and they just command the room. They get people's attention. They speak clearly and there's an energy to it. I just think to myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. They've got it. But then the question for a guy like me who wants it is, how do I get it? And I don't know. And that to your point, I think there is
Yes.
some of these, but that coach, isn't that the same in any field? Where I had a buddy in high school, his name was Ryan Coyle. He played on our basketball team, and he was one of the best teammates I've ever been with. His job was to get me a lot of shots and warm-ups. That's what he brought to our team. But Ryan was also a genius, and Ryan was either a salutatorian, definitely top 10. And at the colony where we had, 590 in our class, like that's a big deal.
Okay.
He didn't study. He he would look at something one time and it just stuck and he had it. And so you're gifted in different areas. And I mean,
Uh-huh.
so I think there's just going to be some guys that have it, and not that they don't work hard, but they can just get the most or the best out of people. And then there's those like, and I would put myself in the hopefully the made category that, man, you just have to work really, really hard to get there.
Right. I think being made, it's really kind of fun. It's taken me a lot of years, to learn this thing. I mean, last year,
Yeah.
I'm 78 now. 77, you'd been to this point guard college thing, right?
Yep.
Well, I learned about peeking at the rim, right? Which they teach there, and stop on a dime.
Yep.
People look at this game, but they don't know it. I knew that, but I didn't know how to put it in words. When you catch the ball, you should peek at the rim. That way you see the whole floor. Even if you're a postman and have your back to the basket, you should peek at the rim before you do anything. But I thought that was just one of the most amazing things I've ever learned about basketball. And I mean, you're never going to learn all this game. I don't see how a kid say he could get bored with it. Every play is different. Everything's different. I still have fun with it. Okay. Late game situations. Quickly. Don't think plays, think players. That's true of all sports. Just get it to somebody that can make a play and let them make a play for the team. That okay, I think in high school basketball you don't need more than 10 kids on a team. You know why? You get
Yeah.
12, you got problems.
That's right.
10's enough. You got to practice. I think the fewer the better. I mean, junior high and stuff like that, you want to have more. And
Yeah, you
I think
kind of
if you're
want it to be
coaching
like a
junior high, go ahead.
pyramid, right? You want it to be a pyramid where junior high, there's a lot. and then it just
Yes.
gets smaller and smaller as you go up. But I agree. I think the years where I tried to carry a lot of guys or even play a lot of guys, yeah, I had more problems. And Coach Thomas had a great quote. He said, "If you cut them in August, they're not mad at you in January." And I always thought about that with having too many people. But you're right. I think you want to have guys that have an opportunity to play, and if they're not going to, then they better be high culture guys that understand. Danny Henderson said he had just those honest conversations with seniors before the season of, you will not step on the floor at all, and preparing them for that, and then giving them the choice whether they wanted to really do that or not.
I think that's smart. And so on. Okay, let's see. 10 on a team. When you take a kid out of the game, I think this is good. Don't say nothing to him. Don't say anything to him. Just let him come on out of the game and sit down. And before you put him in, tell him what he did wrong. Because he's just going to be mad at you when you took him out of the game. You got me? I think
Yep.
that's important to do. Let's see. I wrote down here, I don't know how important this is. The team that fouls the most usually loses.
Yeah, I think
You
that goes
can't
back to
foul a
your
lot.
paint and free throws rule, right?
Right. Uh-huh. Kelvin Sampson has a charge drill on YouTube. Every coach needs to do it. Nobody will get hurt. Have you seen it? You drive in there and you play off 2 feet so nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
Now, this is what I want to say is for people that live around the Houston area. There's a guy down there that's a trainer named Duane Player. He has the greatest name in the world. His last name is Player, but it's spelled Plair. He gives lessons. He's a trainer. He's a genius. He could take a kid. He can notice stuff. He's like you, Matt. He loves basketball, and he has some stuff on YouTube. But if you send your kid there to him, he could really help him be a player. He's a sharp guy. He like I say, has some stuff there. Jawan Player. Do you remember LeVar Ball? That's LaMelo Lonzo
Yep.
Ball. That's his dad. He seems
I
like a
do.
nut,
Yeah.
but he knows something that comes from the Bible. That's why things turn out. He says, it says in the Bible, you get what you say. So, in other words, what you say out loud, you get in life. Did you know that?
Hmm.
That's why you shouldn't say
I've
bad
heard.
things about yourself.
Right. Right.
Muhammad Ali was like this, or Cassius Clay. He would say he was the greatest, and go on about how he was the greatest boxer. You know what? He was. LeVar Ball talked about how great his boys were going to be in basketball. And you know what? They've ended up being great, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to speak things into the air, and it's amazing how it works and so on. Kids are listening to you, even though they don't act like it. I
That's
won't
good.
go into
Yeah.
this, but I was sitting in a class. I'll hit it quick. In 1963, I was a sophomore in high school. And the lady teacher, which I thought she was old, she was probably 45 or 50. I thought she was really old. And I really did. And she said that every 2,000 years, something major happens. I immediately got out my pen or paper and figured out. I was born in 1947. I figured out that I bet you Jesus comes back to earth in 2000. And I said I'd be 53. I remember that in class. Nobody else was paying attention. I generally didn't pay attention, but I remember that just like it was yesterday. So you never know what kids are listening that you say. Say plenty of stuff that's valuable. Remember this. A coach changes more lives in 1 year than most people do in a lifetime. Do you know who said that?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, and he's right. And I say this, a coach is the most important person at school. Do you
Hmm.
know that everybody that goes to school remembers the coach? They remember the coaches. I
Yeah.
think we're the most important people at school. And so we got to watch what we're doing and do a good job. But anyway, I think it's
That's a
amazing.
good reminder. That's a good reminder.
Okay. I think when you come to school every day, you may do this. You should fist bump all your players and you should touch them. Coach K would touch all his players every day. Touch them on the back, give them a high five, do something. Let's see. There's two players that can't have a bad practice. Two people that can't have a bad practice. The head coach and the best player. I think the most important people in America are preachers, the policemen, doctors, and coaches. Okay, you need to go to Google and get Bill Self's press break. Run it against all presses, even man-to-man, all presses except three-quarter court 1-2-2 presses and 2-2-1 zone presses. Just run domino against those. That's great. That'll work all the time. And once the ball comes in against the press, the last place on Bill Self's press breaker to throw it to is back to the inbounder. Roy Williams has a thing on YouTube you need to watch. It's not him doing it, but it's his zone offense. It's how to kill a zone. But since I knew Coach Holiday taught me this zone offense. And it doesn't just kill 2-3 zones, it works against every single zone. If you can imagine this is, okay, it's kind of cut the thing off here. Okay, here's what you do against zones. Ready? You line up with a point and two wings, and they are freelance players against all zones. You put two postmen on the block, and they can play out of 7 spots. The blocks, short corner, elbows in the middle of the free throw line. They're freelance players and they're moving. They're a team. The 3 players on the outside are freelance players. They're moving the ball, trying to get it inside, look for threes, drive. Works against every zone. If it's a half-court trap, you just move one of the postmen up to kind of get into the middle of it, and you just play. It's incredible, but go to YouTube and watch how to kill a 2-3 zone.
By Roy Williams?
Well, it's by somebody else. It's North Carolina playing, and it's Roy Williams stuff.
Okay.
If you're up the last 3 minutes of the game, you need to run a delay game. If it's 1 point, spread them out, shoot layups and free throws, and you need to go to a triangle and 2 in the last 3 minutes. Larry Brown did it his whole career, and nobody even knew it.
Like that. Yeah.
Okay, to get people to remember something when you're giving a speech or talking to your team, Trump does this if you watch him. He says something 3 times during that speech, something he wants to emphasize. And if you want to emphasize something, say it 3 times. You're talking you're doing it at a sports banquet or something. Anytime you want to emphasize something, you say it 3 times. No 1-foot layups, even warming up. Make them shoot them off 2 feet warming up. You got to develop that habit. I said something earlier. I've got 160 tweets I can send out to coaches. That, just an attachment, and they can copy them. They're these things, there are more of them. Some people have an extra heartbeat. Have you ever heard that? Some people have an extra heartbeat. Have you ever heard of Hayden Fry? He used to be the coach years ago, football at Iowa, and really SMU. This is 100 years ago, close to 100 years. But anyway, he noticed that some players have an extra heartbeat. They're special. They can do things. Jordan, of course, had an extra heartbeat. Kobe, I know those are great ones, but there's others that have this too. Vince Young had it at Texas in football. He had an extra heartbeat. You can kind of go through and look at them. I think Ant has it for the Timberwolves. He has an extra heartbeat. He's just a little immature. Just different ones they're special. I only coached one player that had an extra heartbeat. His son is a starting cornerback now for University of Colorado, So the boy must have an extra heartbeat too, or something. He's good. But anyway, you don't find it often. Did you ever play with anybody at Baylor that had it? Did you ever play with anybody that had extra heartbeat? You played with, what's his name? Darren Williams.
Yeah, Darren Williams. Very Black. I would say maybe the way that he was able to play, maybe he did. Yeah, I can see that.
But it's just an unusual trait that people have.
Yeah.
Couple more and I'll quit.
Okay.
Late in the game, 7 seconds and under. You got me?
Yes, sir.
And you're up 3. Foul them out there where they're dribbling. Make the free throw and get the rebound, put it. I've never seen a high school team lose by fouling. I have seen a college team lose, but never in high school. That's good. And not bragging, but the two best things that I do as a coach are out of bounds plays. I think you can score 10% of your points on out of bounds plays, and scouting. In football, the first 10 years I was at La Vega High School, we didn't have huddle. I had to go scout every Friday night. So I only saw us play football the last game of the year, because used to just one team went into the playoffs. They didn't have so many teams like they do now. So I had to figure out, and I like kind of scouting. And so in basketball, I can figure them out. Like, I even called Kelvin Sampson. He's the only Division I coach that talks to me. I didn't call him. I texted him. I said, look, Walter, what's his name? Clayton the third or the second, the guy that played for Florida.
Yeah.
By the way, I think he could be the next Curry, but I over exaggerate sometimes.
Wow.
He's good.
Wow.
I said, when it comes right down to it, he's going to go left to shoot it when he gets it. So, you know what he did? He made the shot that won the game. They called a good play, and he went to his left and made it. You just can kind of know things. Like, I can go out there and look at players. These players all want to do this. 99% of the kids that play basketball are not going to get a scholarship. Only 1% get them, and they're usually over 6'4". I can look at a guy in about 5 minutes and tell if he can play or not. In fact, I ran into a coach years ago that was an assistant. They had an AAU tournament thing at Baylor. And I was over there watching. I was sitting with the assistant coach from the University of Kentucky. And I asked him, I said, how about this LeBron James? I've heard of him. He was just in the 9th grade. Nobody'd heard of him, but I'd read about it, heard about it. He says, Coach, I've already watched him play. He said, I watched him play for 3 minutes against the best seniors in America, and I could clearly tell he was the best player on the floor, and he hadn't shot yet. Isn't that amazing?
First of all, I just want to thank you so much for having this talk with me. We went about 2 hours, which is incredible. To me, one of the big reasons why I do this is to get to have these talks with coaches like you, to where I have you and I get to listen and learn to you for however long. And so getting to do that is incredible. If you don't mind, will you just kind of just say what your email address is? And then what we'll do is any coaches that are interested in your pet peeves list, your 100 tweets, the 160 tweets, or the out of bounds play, maybe that you could send it to them. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that would work. That would work.
All right, so go ahead.
Here's
What's that
my
email?
Well, let me spell it out, because my name's Duane, and it's spelled like 5 million different ways. Only Dwayne Wade spells it the most unique way. But anyway,
Right.
Mine is spelled Duane, the number 4, ever, EVER, hoops, HOOPS, @gmail.com. Okay? That's my email. By the way, I'm such a basketball nut. I'm 78, my wife's 76. We had our gravestones made marker. You got to have them. I figured they're just not going to get any cheaper. But anyway, so we had one made. By gosh, we had basketball put on there. So whenever they look at my grave marker or our grave marker, they'll see basketball. Now, that's pretty much a fanatic right there, isn't it?
I love that. Yeah.
And so on. But anyway, we'll have to talk again. I've enjoyed it. How old are you now?
I'm 43.
Good night. Time does fly.
Yes, sir.
Does fly.
Coach,
Okay.
this was so enjoyable for me. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and talking hoops, but also everything that you've done for basketball. I can't imagine the amount of people that you've influenced and coaches that you've helped over the years. This was awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.